Greetings, beloved Star Child Rising. You are in Christina's Corner, and I am Christina. Welcome back to the podcast where I have the opportunity and the honor to highlight and celebrate individuals who are out here leveraging their skills and their talents to make a difference in this world to help uplift the collective frequency. And today, I have the pleasure of speaking with a true luminary of the theater, Dexter Hamlet. Dexter's career is a rich tapestry woven with decades of dedication to the craft, spanning classical masterpieces to groundbreaking experimental works. As a seasoned actor and the esteemed director of community engagement at the Classic Theater of Maryland, Dexter embodies both artistic excellence and a deep commitment to connecting theater with the wider community. His passion for storytelling and his understanding of the power of performance to illuminate the human experience are truly inspiring. I've seen it up close and personal. Trust me, I know. Join me as we delve into the fascinating journey of a man who has dedicated his life to the stage and a dear friend, the remarkable Dexter Hamlet. Welcome, Dexter.
Thank you. Welcome. Thank you.
So good to see you.
Great to see you, Christine.
Well, on the podcast, I always ask 6 questions. So I'm going to try to stick with 6. And I always start off at the beginning. So my first question is to ask you to go back to your childhood. What were you like as a kid? And what sparked your initial interest in acting?
The my initial focus was not acting, as most kids are my age. Sports was probably my first introduction to. But I knew that I wasn't going to be a big guy. I was a little guy, but I relied on my speed, and just like sports, I would play baseball, and the bullies of the neighborhood would say, it's Hamlet. Come on in. He can't hit. And the very next swing of the bat, I'd hit the ball over their head. And there's a real kind of magic or good fortune, luck, that I was able to see that I could stymie people just by their expectations, by um, thwarting their expectations of my failure. And I was really used to being the butt of everyone's jokes, and so failing in sports was not an option. I was going to use sports to set me aside, and I could do that in the neighborhood, but in the long run, I didn't grow like some of the others. I didn't have a corn-fed diet, and at one point, everyone outgrew me. I was 5'5", and everyone else was approaching 6 foot, and it wasn't going to work. But I saw that happening, and early on, my parents fed me a delicious uh, treat of opportunities to involve myself in, to really focus myself in. Um, I played the violin in second grade and through high school. I was in the orchestra, and that's not doesn't make you a popular guy, really, walking around with a violin case. But I before you knew it, I was playing the flute, the trumpet, the concert bass, and singing. And actually, it was singing that I recognized set me aside. And I made a friend with another kid in the neighborhood who also had a good voice. And his father was an accomplished performer, and he would coach us, and we would do local television auditions. And this is in sixth grade. We would rehearse them in his living room and then go to the auditions. And we really uh, we really thought we were good. We were good. We were talented. He is doing the same thing I do still to this day, and teaching. Uh, but around that time, as I excelled in football, um, I realized that was when I realized that I wasn't going to grow. And when I came back to the theater, which was always in the back of my mind, I realized that my friends in the neighborhood, including this young man I'm talking about, they were doing things that I had no idea were possible for just normal kids to do. They were performing at the Capitol. They were performing for presidents and heads of state through a group that out of Columbia, Maryland. And they also had a skill set that I did a show with them. They were doing a musical in the neighborhood, and there was a kid. I was resentful too because they didn't ask me to do it, but I was playing football. They asked another kid to do it, and he couldn't do it because he had started interning at a local news station. And so he wasn't going to do You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown that year. And so they asked me to play Snoopy in Good Man, Charlie Brown. And something I recognized in watching them work is they had a skill where they silently could create a world around them without any words, without any song. They could create a meme of just themselves opening a suitcase, putting on a cap, and tell a story. And I was fascinated by that. And I knew they were working with a woman named Toby Orenstein, who has coached some successful actors out of Maryland. And I mentioned to my mom that I wanted to maybe meet her. Well, probably a week later, she was in our living room. And I ended up studying with her. Now, unfortunately, I didn't get what they had gotten, but what they had received from her, because she now had a developing body of students and of all different talents, and so I was kind of low man in the room, and there were people she had coached that were entering into college, and I was just a junior high schooler, and so I didn't get what they got, but what I did get was a taste that I could discover it. And at a place where I studied violin lessons, there was a camp that I saw, an arts camp. It cost, it was a lot then to conceive of, $1,500 to go to this arts camp for tuition. But I applied. I applied for a scholarship, which I didn't get. I did later on, and I went to this arts camp, and the and I decided, ironically, to to study theater at that camp, which I remember my mom was confounded because they had a very accomplished group of musicians in that camp that came to study every year. And instead, I went for theater because somehow in singing in junior high and in elementary school, I recognized that there was a story that could be told through music, and my friends were doing it, and they were performing for senators and presidents, and so I kind of I wanted to give that a shot. And I remember this guy that I was studying with was a professional actor from a Baltimore theater company, Center Stage, which is still around today. You've probably heard of it, Christine.
Mhm.
And he talked about discovery being taking in everything you see, everything you hear, smells that you're smelling. You know that the smell is the key sense to memory. And and to and feeling, tactile senses, feel your feet on the floor. And we did all these exercises exploring the different ways we would just sit for 5 minutes and just listen to what we heard, which sounds incredibly tedious for a 13-year-old to do. It was very difficult. I was a blabbermouth then, but for some reason I found myself able to focus and to uh, take in this lesson that he was teaching about uh, taking in the sensations, perceiving the sensations around you. Now he taught us different tools, clown tools. You know, he could stand on his hands and walk for long distance on his hands, but he taught us how to juggle. He taught us how to how to do different mime moves that we could create a wall, you know, invisibly, and ways in which you could use your imagination and a magic to creating an illusion that he taught me fascinated me. And I studied with him for 5 years, and that kind of led to me deciding that I was going to study in college. And I went to the college fair, which actually I had to be. I had an idea where I wanted to go, but I had Carnegie Mellon, Boston University. I looked up good theater schools, and I knew I wanted to go there. But while I was at the college fair, I went to Emerson and Syracuse. I went to some of the good schools that I had read about, and way in the back was a booth. It was like the last thing I did while I was there. I just walked the room, and there was a booth in the back. Wasn't no anybody standing there. It was California Institute of the Arts. And later I found out that most people discovered it in that same way. And there was a catalog they had of pictures and a pictorial of experiences. And one of them I remember was a guy barefoot on a skateboard with a camera. And all these people playing different uh, Indian musical instruments, Eastern drums, and something about that catalog made me want to apply to that school. And then when I was accepted, and I was accepted to all of my choices, uh, I decided that I liked the professor at in New York that I auditioned for, Lou Poulter, and he was my mentor. The years I was there, I decided to go to CalArts, and that was kind of my young experience, my young driving experience towards where I'm at now.
That's really interesting. You know, when I thought of this question, I thought you were going to say something about, for as long as you can remember, you were always front and center at plays and musicals and, just in the front row watching,
Well, there
because
was. Go ahead. Go ahead. There.
I thought about that because I always thought my daughter Miko was going to want to get into acting or theater because she grew up on the boarding school campus of where I lived, and the students there had plays, and whenever they had plays, they would start off on a Friday, and it would go Friday, Saturday, and Sunday performances, right? And
Mhm.
she would be in the front row every performance, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and just watch it and listen to and just be in awe of how they could remember their lines and how they were so good. And I just knew that was what she was going to do, but she didn't. So
You
you
know,
were involved in sports, but
yes, I
it's
was,
funny.
but I'm glad you mentioned that because there was a transitional moment between the sports and the novice kind of theater I was doing, and that was when uh, I've actually found a connection to this moment recently. My mother said there's a new theater downtown Washington called Arena Stage, and I want to see a show. And they're doing a musical version of Raisin in the Sun, and I want us to go
Mm.
see it. My mom knew a lot of things. I mean, I did some Shakespeare when I was 12, and she made me. She made me go to this community theater and audition for it, and they cast me in a lead role. And I said, "Well, this is great. I can do this, Mom, but I don't understand these words. What do I do?" And she handed me a complete works of William Shakespeare, and she handed me a dictionary. She said, "Everything you need to know is in either of these two books." And she was really right, except for I maybe needed an unabridged dictionary, which I spent a lot of time in the library after that because I could find resource material. But later on, just 10 years ago, I was doing a show in Washington, D.C., and the producer said, "I would like you to meet my wife." So I go to lunch in his home, and his wife, Barbara, said was telling me about her background, and I was like, "Oh, that's interesting. Your last name is Cohn. What what was your father's name?" And she said his name was oh, why can't I remember? His name was Mark Cohn, and I realized that Mark Cohn was my mom's best friend, and actually had painted a painting on my wall. It took up the length of the wall. Was "Hey Diddle Diddle, the cat and the fiddle, the cow jumping over the moon, the little dog laughing," And he had painted that rhyme on our wall. But as his daughter told me, that her father was one of the original fundraisers at Arena Stage.
Oh,
So
wow.
it was through that I got auditions. And when I was 13, just after this camp, I was doing professional theater downtown Washington, D.C. For my class came and saw me. And I took like a half a year off or a quarter of a semester off from my eighth grade year to work in the theater downtown.
Wow.
And that,
Wow.
that whet my appetite for sure.
Hmm. Very cool. It's amazing how the universe kind of steps in and
Yeah,
helps to guide, right?
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah,
thank you for sharing.
sure.
All right. Number two, your career spans an impressive range of theatrical experiences from classical Shakespearean roles to immersive experimental productions like Klecksography, Haunting Monsters. How do you find the balance between honoring the timeless texts of classic theater and embracing innovative contemporary performance styles? And how does this balance inform your work at the Classic Theater of Maryland?
It's less an exercise in balance and more of one of determination.
Mhm.
There is a beautiful thing that theater offers, a discipline that exists. You work with people. As adults, we recognize that we don't get along with everybody. You kind of gotta stay focused. You can't make your friends at work. It, the theater, we're all there doing the exact same thing. Doesn't matter whether we have a big role, a small role, a supporting job, a sound designer, lighting designer, but we're all going to collaborate together to create uh, a storytelling opportunity, an environment to tell a story. And if you're focused on that, if you're dedicated to that, the rest uh, the rest comes with time. Your discipline and learning uh, certain things, you find your way down a path where and everyone describes it differently, what they're doing, um, how they make it work, because every theater is not the same. I came to Washington D.C. I with a family. I had friends that said, "Oh, you're going to have kids. Don't do it. Actors, don't do it. Dexter, it's not a good move." I'm sure Laura's friends said the same. My wife's friends said the same thing. No, no, don't get involved in actors. And all of a sudden, something I had eliminated out of my life, because early on, Christine, after college, I started working immediately in television and film. So for 10 years, I was working in television and film. I was starving. I was going without. I was making incredible amounts of money, uh, doing incredible work with incredible people. Just my first, one of my first professional acting jobs after arena stage was in LA, and it turned out I had done a small educational project with Forrest Whitaker, and he was doing The Color of Money, and could not finish this role that he had been hired for, and he thought of me immediately because he knew that I had done the role with him, and so he turned on the producer he introduced the producer to me, and I went up there, and with with an overnight of study, I stepped into that role. So um, uh, a lot of a lot of what you experience is by luck. Again, I moved back to Washington, and I started doing some theater when time allowed because I was a stay-at-home dad. And as I was allowed to find the time that I could audition, I found myself in a, a community theater situation where the company didn't have a space of their own. We're rehearsing in someone's backyard, and it just was not going well. I just was not enjoying it. The theater didn't seem compelling to me. These actors were not studied. They were novice. They enjoyed what they did. Some of them loved. Some of them even did it well. But the whole package didn't exist. But then uh, I got someone saw me do a play, and they shared my name. This is the way that a lot of theater happens. They shared my name with this producer, and I went out and it was another educational project, but I actually worked with the high school in Annapolis, Maryland, and four professionals and this director, we we put together The Grapes of Wrath by Steinbeck. Us four playing the four major roles in it, and father, son, grandma, grandpa, and then we married that work with the local high school here in Annapolis, Maryland. I really enjoyed the way she worked. I knew how I liked working. There was something about her that was really exciting. She called me again 3 months later, but I was doing a show that was going to New York for a brief time. Uh, I turned her down, but a year later, she called me again and said, "Will you come to audition for Richard III?" So I went and auditioned, got the part, and I'm working on it. And one day she shows up at rehearsal. She was not the director, but she shows up at rehearsal and she says, uh, I said, "Well, this is wonderful, Sally. But it was a small space. It was a very small space. I'm talking about, it was a small space, maybe 20 by 40 that we're going to do this show in." And I'm like, "Yeah, this is great, but you need a bigger space." And she goes, "Well, I'm building a theater." I said, "Oh, really? Where?" She goes, "Come with me." And she walked me across the hall, opened the door, And there was this huge room with it was empty, flat room with just nothing but a pole in the middle. And I found out that this was a bank originally. There was like a one major pole that was a major support beam for the whole building in the middle of the space. I go, well, what are you going to do with this? She said, I'm going to build a thrust theater in here. And that's a theater with three sides that sticks out with seating on three sides. And she showed me the blueprints. The audience had a rake incline at about 45 degrees. You could tell you wouldn't have people's heads in front of you. Everyone would have a seat, and everyone would be no further than 30 feet away from the work on the stage. So that's where I'm at now. She opened it after that show, and we could have also just been decimated by COVID. We shut down. We weren't allowed, according to Maryland law, to have a gathering like that. She wrote grants. She learned how to use a camera, how to edit, and she started filming all her work. And we were kind of her guinea pigs because we actually all the work we produced during COVID, I think it was 4 shows, we did on film. And we still, when we have the opportunity, film the work, if not even just for historical purposes, which some of the work we do is under license, and so we can't film it. But other works, original works, and works that are past eminent domain, like Shakespeare or Moliere, we can film. There's free reign, and so that's what we do, and that's what's happening. I think that answers a little bit of my story.
Yes, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
Sure.
Anybody who's watching this can tell how deeply you feel about the work that you do, and I appreciate you, Dexter.
Oh, thank you, Christine.
This third question, you kind of touched upon this. Making a living as an actor is notoriously challenging, yet you've dedicated your decades to your craft. And before I ask this, I just want to back up for a minute when you said something about your wife, Laura's friends probably said to her, maybe you don't want to go with him. And I just want to speak as someone who considers Laura to be one of my dearest. I want to be clear with this, Dexter, that I've always felt from Laura, and I know her very well, the deep love and respect and honor that she has for you. And there was no question in my mind when you all met that you were soulmates. So nothing of that nature did she hear from me. And I can probably assume, knowing Laura's character and knowing some of her other close friends, that they felt the same way I did. So we knew that you guys were soulmates. So didn't matter what you did. Didn't matter what you did, Dexter. We loved you just as we loved Laura.
Thank you.
But what were one, it's still, it's still challenging to make a living, right? As an actor. What were 1 or 2 watershed moments that really clinched it for you to say, I'm in it? I'm in it.
Well, watershed moments don't come out of nowhere. So I had to crash and burn, and I think it was in L.A. My arc in LA the arc of my LA story, my film and television story, really didn't have. I was on a fast track, and I didn't know how to handle it, and I think I crashed and burned, and it sent me back home, uh, um, away from LA. I wasn't going to be able to be alone in LA without going back to the drawing board and reevaluating what it was I wanted. I mean, be very clear. There's a difference between doing theater, and there's a difference between doing film. When I left Cal Arts, I left it with a couple of recommendations to an agent, and because I was that fortunate, work came immediately. Before I could even think, I was working in television and film, and I didn't expect it to be. I thought, yeah, I would have to pay some dues, and it came so easily. And I think, in a way, I squandered that good fortune uh, at that moment in my life. I was young, and so coming home, uh, I called my folks. I said, "Hey, can I come home?" They were getting older. I actually used as an excuse that I can spend some time with them in their golden years, and um, I tried not to sponge off them. So I immediately started working. Well, getting work in the theater around here, I went down to Arena Stage. I did a couple auditions, but it's not like that. It's not like you can just snap your fingers and create an opportunity. Um, you've got to be fortunate, and you've got to marshal your good fortune. And at the same time, you have to constantly be ready to work. Your chops have to be strong, clear, and you've got to keep your muscles, and not just physical muscles, but your theatrical muscle sharp and keen. And I needed a moment. I knew I needed a moment, and I went through some things. I mean, I brought some of those bad habits from LA here, and to stay with my folks, and I lost some jobs because I wasn't as sharp as I could be. So it's through those failures. And during this whole time, I think I met you. I was waiting tables. I was,
Mhm.
I've done so many things. I started writing them down because I couldn't remember the work I had done. I worked in tons of restaurants. At one point, I worked in LA. I worked in temp work to, it was through my parents mentioned, oh, while I was here one time, they were like, you can get a job at a temp agency. So I took that exercise back to LA, and I would go to Manpower, and I would do these little gigs. I started getting a lot of messenger runs at a local television station, and one of the things I recognized was that I could do this job better than the people that had the job there, because I was just a visitor, and I was a unique individual. I was a stranger, and I stood out. And before you know it, this temp job as a messenger became a regular temp job. Every time they needed a temp, they wanted me. They wanted me to hire me. And then there were times, all of a sudden, they needed a mailroom clerk, and all of a sudden, the boss was he needed a Xerox copy operator, and then the boss he was a office service um, purchaser. He was leaving the job, and he wanted to pass the job on to me. So by the end of it, I was I was a purchaser of office supplies for this big television station in Los Angeles. Of course, I crashed and burned there too. But when I got here, um, I didn't mention that in LA, I had, for 4 years, I made fur coats. I was working in a deli and a guy came in, this weird guy came in and he's like, "Hey, kid, you look like a sharp kid. You want to come down and work with me?" I'm like, "Well, what do you do?" He goes, "I make fur coats." And so I thought that'd be interesting. And I went down and he was making from hand fur coats. Probably took 10 days. It was beautiful. It was beautiful work. It was a little frightening because, the animal skins and stuff left a kind of a thought in your head about what you were doing. But it was a beautiful craft that he did. And so from that, I just learned that there was almost anything I could do, a whole bunch of things I could do, and the world was open to me. So I started using that as a tool, because really the book I needed to read, Christine, was Zen and the Art of Making a Living, but it's never been written. And so that's one of the, but again, discovery. You can discover, and the world's different now. I'm telling you, if I went out and looked for a job now, I'd have a hard time, because the only way I know to look at a job, a job ain't gonna knock on the door, my father used to say. You have to go out and actually look for signs. Or in those days, back in the days when I met you, we'd know a restaurant was open, and we'd go in and walk by and see if one day we knocked on this restaurant's door, and there was this guy in cowboy boots. He's opening a Tex-Mex restaurant, and we walked in. The place was barely built. The bar was just raw wood, and he's sanding the bar. And me and my friend, we went in there and we started sanding the bar with him. And before you know it, we were working there. We were opening that restaurant. And we were masters at insinuating ourselves into a world and getting a job. And that's sometimes what you have to do. You just have to walk up and knock at the door and say, "Hey, uh, can you bring me a bite of this food? And I want to work here. I love this food." And that's what gets you the job. So watershed moments came from successes and failures, I think, and learning from my mistakes.
And knowing that you could navigate it come what may.
Yeah.
Um, that's
I
good.
tell my daughter, after we went through her high school drama thing, and I'm sure your daughter has this, that she can talk to anybody.
Mhm.
All she has to do is want to sit in a job interview. She can enchant, she can speak to anybody. And that's a skill that not a lot of people uh, have at the tips of their fingers. But as a performer, and the first acting exercise I learned in a different school that I studied at when I was 14, was the guy would say, "Just walk out center stage and say your name." That was the exercise. He did it every week. Everyone had to get up, walk up, and say, "Hi, I'm Dexter Hamlet." And I can't tell you what I learned from that. Now, the funny thing is, and not to make this guy Ralph, it's a really great guy. Um, he had a tick, a neurological tick from being shell shocked in World War II. He had a twitch that was very profound. He had always had a pipe in his mouth. He had this odd tick, and he would tell us. We were teaching, like, okay, we're going to learn how to act from this guy. What's up with that? Well, found out later that he was an actor, and he is in almost all of Barry Levinson's, his Baltimore film director, all of his films, and he doesn't
Hmm.
have that tick when he acts.
Wow, that's
You know,
interesting.
right? So
Mm.
again, another discovery that I later on, years later, when I was doing that show with Forrest Whitaker, one of the other guys stuttered. And I'm like, "You're going to do Shakespeare and stutter? How are you going to do that?" When he did Shakespeare, he didn't stutter.
Mhm.
He only stuttered in real life, in
Mhm.
his day to day. And it just shows you that determination or love from something from the heart can transform you.
Mhm. Thank you for sharing.
Sure.
All right, next one. I'm enjoying this conversation, Dexter. As the director of community engagement at the Classic Theater of Maryland, you are deeply involved in connecting the arts with diverse audiences. Could you share some of the most impactful ways you've seen theater foster community and spark meaningful dialogue, especially in today's social climate?
When I had to discover what community engagement was going to be at this theater. Um, we've never we've never created a job description that um, defines what the job is. I mean, I kind of, for the longest time, I thought it was one thing. It was maybe helping to build an audience, and it didn't seem like there was much opportunity to do that unless I was on stage. They Sally, who is the artistic director, Sally Boyette, she, during that time of COVID, she had a lobby. She created a room, a little platform stage at one side of the room, a bar on the other side, on one other side, adjacent side of the room, and she hung some, you know, beautiful tapestry on the back wall, and said she was creating a stage. At times, she was doing this thing where she was staging cabarets uh, with a jazz band that she was planning on doing once a month. We do it now twice a month because it's quite popular. And she brings in this group called the Unified Jazz Ensemble, five incredible musicians usually. It's really three, a bass player, a piano player. She puts her grand piano on that platform that she built. She's hung lights to illuminate the stage. We bring in tables and chairs to seat the 60, 70 people we seat in this kind of jazz club that we've created. And uh, we do, or she will create uh, cla- uh, classic cabaret material from the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s. And as far as, in her words, she stops at the 80s because no good music was made after the 70s. Right. So, but we found that people really vibe off the music of their era. When they go home, singing some tune that Sinatra sang, uh, or that AC and the Sunshine Band sang, or the Rolling Stones did, and we showcase these cabarets with a theme, and we have found again twice a month 60, 70 people will crowd into that room to listen to great, great jazz on this grand piano that this guy's playing. And he also sometimes brings in his vibraphones. And with 10 mallets in his hand, or 8 mallets in his hand, he'll play the vibes. And he's brilliant. He brings a bass player and a drummer every time he comes in, and a sax or trumpet player or guitar player, depending on the style of music. He'll sub in different uh, different performers, and they'll back our house performers. We'll have 4 house performers that are part of our company, um, or bring in guest performers. We have a blues musician that comes in, a vocalist that comes in and does the blues, and she has friends. Sally was on Broadway when she was younger, and she'll bring in people from New York that she knows that will take advantage of the evening and perform for the subscribers that we have uh, in the theater. Now, to make it clear, I saw this cabaret happening again once a month. She only does maybe 3 rehearsals. She rehearsed the week before. She'll rehearse the day before and the day of, and that's it. And you go on, you wing it. I've done a few. It can be nerve wracking, but the band is so good they carry you. So I said, "Why aren't you doing this all the time, Sally? This is great." She goes, "Well, I only do this so I can raise money and do Shakespeare. That's what I really want to do." So I really respected that because I love doing Shakespeare. So this was a way of this was another way of bringing people in the door. And she at one point told me that I'm the director of community engagement. I'm going to host these cabarets, these 2 cabarets monthly. So 2 cabarets monthly, I open the door for people that are our regular theater goers that have come to hear some good jazz. And I stand at the door in the evening and I say, Jack, have a good evening. It's great to have you again. Um, and shake their hand and tell them how wonderful it is that they're part of the theater. If they happen to be new to the theater, at the intermission of the cabaret, I take them down the hall to where the theater is and I show it off and tell them what's coming up next. And as Sally does too, as part of the cabarets, is telling people what's coming up next. But the reality is that once you've been in even the cabaret and experienced it, it's no different than any other cabaret, except for you feel the energy in the room and the heartfelt need to express. And if you've seen it once, if you've come to our theater once, which you've been, you won't be able to resist more. It's addictive, and all you need is a a quiet room, and uh, good good text to work from, and the heart for telling a story,
Mhm.
and that's what we do, and that's how that works.
Yeah, it's an intimate, it's a very intimate environment, and you
Yeah,
have people there who love the theater,
yeah.
just as the people come in there who love the music, and then you all are cultivating the relationships, and that's what it's all about, you
Well,
know?
it's almost like you can't. I would love to say they come. Some of it does come from me because it's our imagination as actors. But we're telling Charles Dickens stories. We're telling Moliere stories. We're telling Shakespeare's stories. Now the um, the mission statement of the Classic Theater of Maryland is to reimagine classic works. So, under no mistaken, are all of them in pantaloons. Sometimes, we did Hamlet a few years ago. We did it like we were in the White House and like it was West Wing. And so we reimagine them. We don't reimagine all of them because all of it is not necessary. But we did a comedy of errors, uh, which really dealt with travel across the ocean, but we did it with time travel and in a steampunk, European steampunk, the industrial age, turn of the century style. And so we reimagined, and through our imaginations, we just did the Crucible, and we did it. Period. We did it in the time of the Salem witch trials, but at the start of the season, we did Macbeth. And instead of doing it uh, in 16th century, uh, we did it, or 17th century, I should say, we did it we did it in 1789 during the time of the Confederation, during the time that America um, was about to discover the Constitution, and there was chaos going on, and people didn't quite know exactly what this thing called America, what it was going to be. And so we use that as the environment often uh, for war, or an analogy that takes us a little away. And when you do that, you can you give people you're bringing them closer to the work, and they can imagine it a little clearer for themselves what these are. They're not historical events that have taken place 600 years ago, but they are they're fresher and newer, and you bring a new take to it that allows people to understand it more deeply.
A lot of great things happening there. And I will make sure for the listeners that I have the website link in the video description. So people, if you're in the area or you'll be in the area, make sure you check it out.
A lot of people come to Annapolis to holiday, to vacation, to see the sights. It is a destination, and we want to be the destination for theater on the East Coast in the Mid-Atlantic area. That's one of our goals.
Okay. Last question.
So soon.
This has been a great conversation.
Thank you. It has been wonderful.
What advice, you've been doing this for a long time, what advice would you give to aspiring actors who are just beginning their journey, particularly regarding how to stay resilient in the face of so much rejection?
Yeah. You're not going to be able to get away from that. You can't escape that. With every failure comes an rejuvenated desire to do better than you did the next time you go into it. You're going to be better. You've got to practice. You've got to disappointment. Everything world is full of disappointment. You got to kind of get over that. And what's funny is I don't even think twice about it anymore. I'm used to it. I had my agent's secretary I used to call her, Dorothy, did I get it? Did they like me? And she goes, Dexter, forget about it. Put a feather in your cap and move on, right? Because one thing I can tell you is I've done thousands of auditions. I only maybe nailed 280 of them, all right? But I've done thousands of them. I get a rise out of it. I really enjoy just going in and meeting someone, because that's not the end of the story. I have auditioned for people that have called me two years later and said, I want to work with you. So it's never really over. It's funny, I looked it up because I think a new actor really should read the 4 Agreements. Don't assume, by Miguel Ruiz. Don't assume, always do your best, be impeccable with your word, and don't assume. Did I say that one? There are 4 of them. You can look it up. You really need to try to find balance in your life. Being an actor is something that came natural to me. It's not everything. And if I made it everything, my children are everything. My marriage is everything. But theater, when my wife didn't like LA, she wanted to move. And in a way, I thought, oh, it's over. I was actually working at the time at a beautiful theater, outdoor theater in Los Angeles. And before you know it, my wife, kids were on a plane coming to Maryland with a place to live. And I was supposed to clean up the apartment, put the cat and dog in the car, and follow them. And after I put them on the airplane, I went up to this outdoor theater. It's in Topanga Canyon, near where the fires were in LA. Beautiful community, a real hippie community, but it's an outdoor theater. It's the theater that I told you that I got the gig from Forrest Whitaker. It's a beautiful place. I didn't mention the kind of place it was. It was the place only an actor would dream of. I was up there to do Romeo and Juliet originally for the first show I did. And Mercutio was standing in a creek that ran under the theater. And he was splashing water from this creek on his face and saying, "The day is hot and the Capulets abroad." And there's a huge oak tree with a rope, and people were swinging on this rope. A dog that just anytime he wanted would walk across the stage. There was a woman carrying a baby. There were 25 people on stage while during this one stage fight where all these people, all these townspeople are walking through the street, a baby, and all these things going on. And it was alive. The place was a living theater, outdoor, with bugs and snakes, but it was alive, and it was a beautiful place. And when I moved back to LA because I had crashed and burned, one of the things I did, I'm glad to be tying these stories together. I moved back to LA and I took a friend of mine up there to see the theater, because I knew there would be nobody up there on this particular day. And so I went up there, and sure enough, no cars were there. And I kind of walked around like it was my home. I hadn't been there in 10 years. And so I go, maybe we can get in the theater. Let me show you the theater. So we walked to the theater, and there are these huge gates that go up like 12 feet, wooden doors. And I opened them and walked in with my friend. And oh my goodness, there's a woman up in the thing. She goes, "Oh, no, we're not. We're closed. We're not doing any theater day. You need to come back, on Thursday or the weekend and see one of our plays." And she came down and she's standing face to face with me. And I realized that it's the artistic director, my boss from 15 years before. And she said, Dexter Hamlet? I was astounded. Like, she remembers me, And so all of a sudden I'm working there, and I have a regular gig, and my wife she's tired of LA. She wants to move. And this was like, great. This is lifetime stuff that I'm still a member of the company today. I could walk over there, audition and be working. And I went up there after I dropped them off at the airport, looking just really for a peaceful place to kind of meditate and think about. I mean, I was really trying to find a way to leave my family. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I really was confused. And usually, Ellen Geer was the name of this artistic director at this theater. She was Grandpa Walton from the Waltons. She was his daughter. He was blackballed in the 50s, and he kind of thumbed his nose at Hollywood and created an outdoor theater in his backyard. And so that's what I was a part of. And so I went up there to kind of meditate. Ellen Geer never had time for me. She's a very busy woman. If I was in her show, she'd have plenty of time. But all of a sudden, she's sitting next to me, her arm around me. "Dexter, how you doing? It's good to see you. What brings you up here today?" Blah, blah, blah. And I said, "I'm not going to be able to finish up the season. My family's decided to move back east. And I don't know if I could find a way to stay here and not go back east. I may do it." And she looked at me and she goes, "Dexter, don't do that. There's only one reason we do what we do as actors." And I said, "What's that, Ellen?" She goes, "We can do it anywhere. You can go anywhere and do it." So I moved back to LA that month. I mean, we moved back to Maryland that month, and after a year or two, I find myself here at the Classic Theater of Maryland, and Ellen Geer was right. You can find it anywhere. You can do it anywhere. I could have done it in the backyard of that community theater that I was quite disappointed in. But it wouldn't be at the level of excellence that I feel this theater does. Like I said, all you got to do is turn down the lights and let the designers create a soundscape of crows cawing and babbling brooks in the background and great classical music in the transitions of scenes. The lighting designer will create a visual scape, whether it be something incredibly beautiful. In A Midsummer Night's Dream, we had orbs, orbs and lights and globes hanging, and a moon back projected in the back center of the theater. It was a beautiful environment that, with the silence, just puts you in the mood to hear a story. And when you turn the lights down, something magical happens. Something people can they're receptive. They've bought a seat. They've asked themselves to be part of this experience. And through what the Greeks call the willing suspension of disbelief. And once they've done it a couple times, they're hooked in it. They know how to willingly suspend the belief that they're in a theater with a whole bunch of people, just like we do in a movie theater. But in a movie theater, I think it takes you a little further from it, because you're all in your imagination, like in a book. The book is, you're reading the words, but the words are being projected off your brain, off your psyche. But in the theater, you're watching it live and breathe right in front of you. And there are times where you hear people gasp, take a breath, maybe even speak out loud. Something people do often in the movie theaters, but not many people do it in the theater. It doesn't happen very often, but you hear people say something, or the breathing in the room at a moment of tension will just synchronize up, and everyone is breathing with the same inhalation and exhalation. And it's there that empathy is transferred and shared in the storytelling. And it's quite a powerful place. I did a show in LA. You could have called it a community theater. Do we have time for another story?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Um, and this director that I had gone to school with said, "Okay, I'm going to send you a script. I want you to read it, but I only want you to read your part." And that never happens. No one tells you just read your part. I'm like, what? So I went through and I read it through first read. I just read my part. And it's because it was, this goes into the experimental realm that you talked about. It took place on a train. And uh, the train, when the play starts, a nuclear bomb drops next to the train. And there were maybe 5 characters in it, but there were a full group of people on the train, but some of them were not real people. They were just dummies, mannequins, a banker with money coming out of his head, a bartender, just a woman talking to a bartender who is just stuck in one position. And the first line of the play is delivered by a child who's with her mother, and everyone on the train is on their way from one place to another. And she's on her way to see her father for the first time, but she only knows her father because he's an actor and has been on The Twilight Zone. And when her mother speaks to the banker that's sitting next to her, because she knows something has happened. She knows a nuclear bomb has dropped next to the train, but she doesn't quite know consciously. So she asks the banker, "Do you know what happens?" And the daughter says to her, "Don't talk to him, Mom. He's dead." She knows what's happened, the little girl, because she understands it in the perspective of Twilight Zone. She knows it immediately. But the rest of the people on the train, they don't know. They can smell burning flesh, but they don't know that they're in that split second between life and death. And that's where the play took place at the moment everyone realizes that they are not going to arrive at their destination. And my character was, I wanted to be a musician, but instead, he's on his way to enlist in the military in a war in Central America to fulfill his civic obligation. He's going to put being a musician on hold to do this, but being a musician is what he wants to do. And at the end of the play, by matchlight, because the train is getting hotter and hotter, the lights are getting lower and lower. He lights a match and he looks out at the audience and he says, "Is this the kind of world you want to live in? A world without any music? Is anyone out there? Can anybody hear me?" And this woman answered me. She's like, "I can hear you, sweetie." And then you heard her because she spoke out of turn. She was so wrapped up in the play, in the storytelling that she spoke. And she came up to me after the show, and I knew it was her because tears were rolling down her face. And she said, "Thank you. I'll never think of war in the same way again." And I realized that that's what I wanted to do. This is a reminder of that I've chosen the right place to be. So I think a young actor just has to know that it takes a while to be in those situations. You got to be patient, and you got to keep working, and you got to rely a little on luck and good fortune, and don't waste your good fortune. Marshal your opportunities and stick with it. And later in life, you may realize that, oh my God, I'm still here. Uh, I don't feel like any kind of real success. I'm not the movie star that I want. Not every living room that those childhood, those 12-year-old dreams that I had aren't didn't happen. But that doesn't mean that I'm not doing it, that I'm not storytelling and changing people's lives and touching people one by one. And that's what I wanted to do.
And that's real success.
Yeah,
That's real success.
yeah, yeah.
Thank you so much, Dexter, for sharing. I really enjoyed this conversation. It makes me miss being um, present with you all and having these type of conversations that we used to have all the time.
We
Love
did.
it. And we'll do it
We
again.
we miss you. We miss you too. Laura
Miss you.
misses you.
Yeah, we'll see each other. We'll see each other at some point soon. Um, but in the meantime, to all the listeners, I will put the information of Dexter's Theater there so you could go check out
Classic Theater of
what
Maryland.
Classic Theater of Maryland when you're in the Annapolis area. Um, make sure you reach out and go check it out. You will not regret it, promise you. So thanks to all the listeners. Tune in. See you on the next podcast. Love and light to you. And thank you, Dexter.
Thank you, Christine.